Well, if this isn't a pickle the Dallas Mavericks find themselves in. What's up, everybody? This is Darreck Kirby, aka DDP of the Dallas Prospect, and we unfortunately have a less than fun post-game show to cover today. It is not victory, in this case, Saturday. It is a frustrating Dallas Mavericks loss. They were coming into the game last night with a chance to close out their first series win in a decade. They were 17-10 all time going into those games. They were 5-1 under Carlisle in the playoffs going into those games. They didn't get it done. And there's a multitude of reasons. Blame deserves to go in many different directions. It's an equal distribution. But we're going to try and dive into and process what happened in Game 6 in the Clippers' 104-97 victory as they take their third straight game in Dallas over the Mavericks. Home court means nothing in this series, apparently, because the Clippers go 3-0 in Dallas. Dallas goes 3-0 in LA. But here's the difference. Even though, hey, the road team has won every game, I don't like the odds of having to go to LA and deal with Terminator mode Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who's been very good this series as well. It's going to be a war of attrition. It's less than a 48-hour turnaround for both teams. And the question is, who has more left in the tank? We know the Clippers, on the premise of their roster alone and their combined star power, have more in the tank than Dallas, but health is also going to be a concern here. Now, in the game last night, Dallas had a chance. They had their chances. Tim Hardaway Jr. was absolutely magnificent through much of that game. You had the Tim Hardaway Sr. in the house. Anytime we know that you have Hardaway family in the house, he shows out, and it was exactly the same last night as well. Unfortunately, it isn't quite enough because after the end of the third quarter, the Mavericks made a nice surge again. The fourth quarter betrayed the Mavericks, just as the second quarter had betrayed the Mavericks. Dallas came out and they actually won the scoring battle in the first quarter. They had a 28-26 lead, which, yes, played into the all season long. They are now it's 29-2 in games in which they do not have a lead. Or in games in which they do have a lead at the end of the first quarter. And the Clippers have gotten them both times in this series. They got them in Game 3 and they got them in Game 6. Both must-win games for the for the Clippers. I keep getting distracted by the comments. What up, Big Play Slay? But yes, it was a frustrating situation for Dallas because while Luka was still very good, 11 points, actually would have been 13, but correctly so, his last bucket on the Mavericks' last possession is waved off because it is still touching his hand as the shot clock buzzer goes off, even though you could easily say, and I think rightly say, he was fouled on the shot, but it wasn't called, so they waved off the basket. It's just a 2-point lead after one, largely because of Reggie Jackson, who was unconscious in the first quarter, opened up the game 6 of 6 from the field, and had himself 20-plus points on the night. Huge game for Reggie Jackson. Now, he did go down with some kind of leg injury, and he did cool off even before that. So we'll see what happens in Game 7 for his availability. He has been very, very good for the Clippers in this. And for a lot of that, he was carrying LA in that first quarter because Kawhi only had 3 points, believe it or not, at the end of the first quarter. And it was largely Reggie Jackson running the show. He outscored Luka in that first quarter as well. I think he had 14 in the first quarter. Luka had 11. So that was the thing, man. It was a battle of what role players could show up, and then could the stars be the stars when they had to. And Luka, good start. Not the scorching start he had in Game 3 or Game 5, but a good start. And even though Dallas had the lead, it felt tense. It felt like this was by no means a done deal. There is a little bit of context here if you believe in whether or not We should pay attention to who the officials are for certain games because, hey, our record when this is the officiating staff or whatever has significance. If you bank on that, which there is something to it, the Mavericks have certainly seen that in history, but I do think it gets a little blown out of proportion. Going into last night, the Mavericks had an official on there. I think his name is Steve Gobble. They were 8-0 this season when Gobble was officiating. That was not the case last night, as we had some wretched officiating there. At times, Luka could get hit in the face with a sledgehammer and they weren't going to call it. Other times, some tic-tac stuff was called in favor of the Clippers. Paul George falling down on his own gets a call. And it was a frustrating thing because in such a physical game, it's like if you're going to go to the basket and try to get rewarded with trips to the foul line, but you're not getting the benefit of the calls, it's going to put you in a corner and put you really at a disadvantage. And that's kind of what happened for Dallas last night. Let me see here. I'm going to pull up the box score as well. I said earlier Reggie Jackson had 14 points at the end of the first. He actually had 12, I'm seeing. So correction on that front. But the Mavericks in this situation, they are still in control. And they even managed to get through the start of the second quarter while Luka's on the bench. And we know that's huge because the Mavericks don't, at least in this series, their second unit does not protect leads while Luka's on the bench. Their plus minus with Luka off the floor has been terrible. But they actually won that advantage in his first stint off the floor last night, which was significant. It was only maybe 2.5, 3 minutes, but it still allowed them to take a 9-4 edge on the boards in that time. On the boards as in like points, not rebounds. And Luka got some valuable resting time while the lead actually extended. That was huge. However, LA came right back. As Kevin Gray points out on Twitter, the Clippers had a 12-4 run after going down 37-30 in order to get back into the game. The Mavericks in the second quarter completely fell apart. They were sloppy with the ball. They only scored 17 points. It was a rough thing, and you had a really weird trend that was completely opposite to what this series has been. You had, in the first half, Luka actually posted a -8 net rating, and the Mavericks actually managed to outscore the Clippers when he wasn't on the floor. So, bizarro world there. Like I said, complete reversal of what we've seen. But it was still a situation where in that second quarter alone, Dallas had 6 turnovers, and at the half, the Clippers had a 3-point lead as a result. So Clippers won the scoring edge there by 5 in the second quarter. Doncic had 15, which means he only had 4 in that second quarter, and Kawhi had 16. So Kawhi got going a little bit in the second quarter. 3 points through the first frame, and then he gets, 15 in 15. Wow, my mental skills are just so awesome right now. Wow, 13 points in the second quarter. And for him, he would really kick it into another gear in the second half. Kawhi in the first quarter did not look sharp. He looked a little passive, I thought, but he really turned it on in the third quarter because there was a stretch there late where even though Dallas actually reclaimed the lead and even pulled away just a little bit, like 5 or 6 point lead going into the fourth quarter, Kawhi Leonard had a stretch there where he scored 13 straight for the Clippers by himself, and he was cooking. That mid-range game, LA was phenomenal in the mid-range this game, and that's a huge turn for this series because, yes, we know that's Kawhi's sweet spot, but Dallas, the adjustments they made in Game 5 really took away where the Clippers were shooting like 73% in the paint in the series, and that was just abysmal defense in terms of Dallas's interior. So they kind of took that away, but LA in that extended range, in that in-between gray zone, if you will, absolutely lit up Dallas in this series, in this game last night, and it was a crazy turn of events there because once Kawhi got going, you kind of knew you were going to have to either have, Tim Hardaway keep going nuts, which for whatever reason, once the fourth quarter hit, it was like the rim just completely shrank The ball wouldn't fit through it anymore. He went cold. Dorian Finney-Smith, who had a great run there as well at the end of the third quarter with 3 big threes, 3 assists as well. He went cold. Luka, I thought, still stayed a little too passive, trying to create for his teammates, which is great. But the problem was that they weren't knocking down shots, and Luka was basically watching on one end as Kawhi would run wild and Dallas could do nothing to stop him. And then he wasn't on the other end taking it right back at him. I thought he wasn't hunting his shot enough. And I know he's not a pure scorer in terms of his mentality, but I thought that's when we needed him to be that. And for a closeout game for that stage and for the importance of the game, I did think that was a misstep by Luka. I think he was too passive because he didn't like that he took 37 shots in Game 5, even though the Mavericks needed him to take arguably every one of those other than maybe the last couple, which just didn't drop. But still, it's been a weird thing in this series where in the 3 Dallas wins, Luka has not scored more than 4 or 5 points in the fourth quarter. And in 2 of the 3 losses, I don't count Game 4. Game 3, he had 10 points. And this game, I think he had like 16 in the fourth quarter. No, that can't be right. He had like 12 points, maybe, in the fourth quarter. I have the note somewhere here. I'll just shuffle through and find it in a minute. But the Mavericks had their runs in this game, and they were in position to shore it up. They did do some strange things with the rotation in the fourth quarter that I thought was a mistake. Willie Cauley-Stein gave you some quality minutes in this game, but I really thought that they were over-reliant on him in the fourth quarter. He limits a lot what your offense can do, and they stuck with him for a good 6 or 7 minutes of that fourth quarter, where I thought you would have been better suited having Dwight Powell out there, especially with the impact Dwight Powell had in Game 5. But Dwight Powell was, as I said, kind of an unsung hero of Game 5 for the Mavericks, and yet he came back with just 7 minutes last night. I don't understand that. I do not understand that. Willie Cauley-Stein got 19 minutes. Again, Cauley-Stein in 19 minutes, 2 points, 4 boards, and a block. Not that Dwight is a light you up on the scoreboard guy most of the time, but it's still a situation where I didn't like that rotation. I thought even though I'm very reluctant on playing Boban heavy minutes, he got the start again, 17 minutes, 12 points, 9 boards, but 5 of 13 from the field. He missed a lot of chippies right around the rim, and I don't like that. You know, I'm leery of giving him heavy minutes, but I don't know. I don't know that I would have put him in the fourth quarter, but they were killing you in the mid-range game, and a zone would have disrupted that because it's threes that kill a zone. So that's something to consider because the Clippers did not shoot the 3 well last night. Let me see here. The Clippers shot 29% from 3. That's a scary thing, that you lost to LA in the game they scored just 10 of 34 from 3. Now, you conversely shot just 32%, but still, they didn't play to their strength, and they still beat you. Dallas, for the game, shot just 42% from the field compared to nearly 50%, actually 47% to be precise, for the Clippers, so that's not great. Dallas' second quarter was laden with turnovers, but they were better overall, still committed just 11 for the game, so a good rebound there, but still not the ideal possession because, as I said, the second quarter was really rough and the fourth quarter was rough as far as scoring and as far as turnovers. Quarters 1 and 3 were much cleaner for Dallas. Let me see here. So the Clippers, in taking control of the second quarter, as I mentioned, Dallas' struggles, had an 18-6 run over the final 7 minutes, including 5-0 in the final 2:11. That's from Bobby Corrala on Twitter. So that was a difference maker there. Let me see. Third quarter, Mavericks came out aggressive. Boban got a lot of looks early on and was really, really leading the way. They were getting him established down low, and he was taking advantage of it. I was talking earlier about, I'm just curious. So we know what Kawhi did. Kawhi had like 42 of his team's final 68 points, which is obscene. But at the same time, Paul George had 20 and 13, but he did a lot of that damage in the first half. Marcus Morris, 1 of 10 from the field, 4 points. That's brutal that you let a game in which he, who is a key player for them, perform so bad and still give up the win. Reggie Jackson had 25 and 9, but 20 of those were in the first half. So that's huge. That's huge as well. Like, it was the Kawhi Leonard show. So I'm frustrated by the adjustments from Dallas. Batum, only 6 points. The freaking bench had 4 points for the Clippers in the game. The Clippers bench had 4 points for the game. That's obscene. Now, one chess move that I noticed for the Clippers in the fourth quarter, at the start of the fourth quarter, both Luka and Kawhi were resting. Zubac only played 5 minutes, and the first 2 or 3 of those, maybe not the first 2 or 3, but 2 or 3 of those came in the first couple minutes of the fourth quarter when Luka was on the bench. So Ty Lue finally apparently realized their greatest Achilles heel was anytime they were playing 18 minutes or more for Zubac, Luka was abusing him, constantly putting him in switch situations over the screens and then just scoring at will on him. And the second Luka went to the scorer's table to check back in, they put not only Kawhi back in the game, but they took out Zubac. So weren't even going to risk that at all. But Zubac still effective in that time. 5 minutes, yes, 2 points, both of which came at the line, but he had 6 rebounds. So he did his damage when Luka was out. Even though Luka played like 41 minutes, he still was effective in playing almost every one of those minutes Luka wasn't on the floor. So that's a good adjustment by LA, and it shows that they are aware of the trend that has been working against them. KP in this game, we got to have a conversation about this. Porzingis played 31 minutes, had 7 points, 5 boards, 5 boards, 3 assists, 3 of 7 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3. He had 1 block, 3 steals. I thought his defensive effort and his rotations were good. I thought he was giving a lot of effort on that front, and he was playing pretty sound defense, not like blow you away defense, not peak defensive KP effort, or rather performance. But I thought the effort was there, and I thought he was effective. He went from being a severe liability defensively for us to being a competent defender on the perimeter. Didn't matter if he had Marcus Morris he was having to guard. Didn't matter if he had Paul George in a switch situation. He was playing well. The problem, and I think it's twofold, and I know even last night after the game there was a lot of tension even within the fan base as we were trying to discuss this. I don't think the Mavericks are using him to his strengths. The fact that they're basically telling him to go be a 7-foot wing standing on the perimeter is garbage. If you acquired KP for the kind of blockbuster deal you sent, and you gave him a 5-year, $158 million contract, you cannot have a stage like this where not even just for a single game, but for an entire series thereabout, where you don't utilize him. Whatever you have to do to get him to his positions of strength, you have to do it. That must be the adjustment from Dallas as far as the offense is concerned, because you can't just put it all on Luka and say carry the wagon across the finish line, despite the fact that you're going up against a Goliath here in the Clippers, despite the fact that they are a deeper, better team than you. If you play at peak efficiency, you can steal this series. But if you don't, then you're going to run out of gas. And that's kind of what it felt like we saw in the fourth quarter. You had a freaking, 23-point game out of Tim Hardaway Jr. Basically gave you everything you could ask for from him. I know we wanted 30, and it looked like we would get it because he was in that position going in the fourth. But 9 of 19, 4 of 11 on threes, 1 of 1 at the line. He was making big, timely plays. He had set a 7-0 run at one point by himself, had several runs by himself. You got everything you could ask for out of him. Luka, even though I thought he was too passive, 11 of 24 from the field, 2 of 9 from 3, he did give you 4 steals. So Luka's defense I thought was good. I just thought he was too passive at times looking for his own shot. I thought there were times he wasn't attacking the double team and not, even when he passed out of the double team, it kind of felt like he was stationary a little bit. And I don't think that's something he could afford to do. So if you have KP playing like KP, then that's different. But I don't think Dallas has adjusted well in their offense. It's a detriment not only to themselves, but it's a detriment to KP and what his future production role, whatever, can be with you. Like, that's the simple truth of it. You're wasting an opportunity. Even if KP has regressed, even if whether it's a 1-year regression because he just never had a chance to get fully right in the offseason and the condensed schedule wore on him where he never quite got to where he needed to be, or if it's just an outright regression and this is the new norm. I don't believe that this is the limit of KP. I think Dallas is, for how they envision using him and how they are choosing to use him, are putting him in a no-win situation where he is not getting chances to be productive. He had 7 shots on the game. Dude, one of those was a jacked up shot in down 7 with like 5 seconds left. So for all intents and purposes, he had 6 shots on the game. He played 31 minutes. You can't do that. He had 6 shots the game before. Now, that was in a win, but you cannot do that. Like, that's not even role player quality. I said earlier Tim Hardaway Jr. got 19 shots. I'm not saying take some of Hardaway's away necessarily for KP. I understand that. Like, Dorian Finney-Smith got 8 shots. Dorian Finney-Smith got 8 shots. The fact that KP is 4th in line, because KP had the 4th most shot attempts for you in this game. Does that sound like a guy that they're treating as a number 2 option? Again, I know what they're trying to do with spacing the floor, but the way that LA is playing him, hugging him tight, and basically removing him from the equation so they're allowed to throw double teams at Luka, I've not really seen a counterpunch from Dallas on that, and I really, really thought Dallas was going to have a counterpunch ready for that exact thing going into Game 6. So the fact that they didn't is kind of disturbing to me. I'm not over here like tearing my hair out like, fire Carlisle now. No, I'm not doing that. I am, however, saying that I'm very concerned, and if we're losing our grasp on this situation as it pertains to KP and what we're going to get from him value-wise, I don't know that you can bounce back. I don't know if, like, in the off season you can just say, like, okay, we understand we just effed up the handling of this, so now we're going to completely, fully commit to getting KP going. I almost feel like because KP has missed so many games this year, and this is just my pure speculation, I feel like because KP has missed so many games this year, both from necessity and from the Mavericks just being overly cautious, and because the team has had success playing without him, I really get the feeling that Carlisle just doesn't trust in him and his availability. And as a result of that, he's reluctant to lean too heavily on him in this situation here. Like, Carlisle's leaning harder on Dorian Finney-Smith, Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxi Kleber, hell, Boban. He's leaning harder on guys like that in this stage, in this moment, than he is for KP. And I don't know, man. I don't know what that means for KP's future in Dallas. I'm as frustrated as anybody in this because, to me, you have, in terms of the type of talent you have in Porzingis, you have an uber rare talent. And yet, through his own misfortunes of health, and I think and when I say I'm talking about your coach, Rick Carlisle, and your offense and your scheming for him and really implementation of him, you're almost going out of your way to ensure that you get the least production out of him. Now, Rick would go out there and he would say, hey, he went out there and he played good defense. You know, he knocked down a couple shots for us, got us some transition dunks that were great for energy. Yeah, okay, that's nice. But if 8 points, 7 points, 6 points, if that's your bar for your highest paid player on this stage, dude, at some point you just got to call a spade and say, either you effed up when you gave him the contract or you effed up in how you've utilized him. So, yeah, I don't want to put everything on KP. I really don't, because even if it is a regression due to injuries and just a culmination of them, it's not his fault he gets injured. Some bodies just don't hold up. I mean, in any circumstances, you're going to have times when your body just fails you, and it doesn't matter how you prepare or train or whatever. You can do little things that might reduce the chances, but ultimately it just boils down to, can your body hold up to the grind and the strain of what you're doing? And, you know, I remember in my case playing my senior year of high school, I got to the second half of the season and my body just felt like it was breaking down. I multiple times in the season pinched a nerve in my lower back. I had issues with my knees, just like sprained MCL, and it just seemed like I couldn't stay healthy. I'd come back. I wouldn't miss games, but I was very limited when I would play. And I would come back and I'd be okay for a game or two, and then something new, nagging, would creep up and it would set me out again, where my role would have to drastically reduce. I would do everything right, get as healthy as quick as I could, go out there, and then I'd have something new come up, and I understand it. And so I'm reluctant to lay it all at KP's feet and be like, it's your fault. Like, sometimes your body just breaks down, and it is what it is. But I don't think Dallas is doing KP any favors. I think, in fact, they're actually working to his detriment in terms of how they're utilizing him in the offense. And I think that's where you miss Silas a lot. A lot. I think Silas knew how to get the most out of KP, and you saw that in the bubble. When KP physically and mentally was finally right, he was a 30-10 guy with the offense that Silas installed. But we'll see. It's going to be a big summer. I think Dallas has no choice but to look at moving on from KP, because you can, like, this is a cannot afford to miss off season. You have to make it work, because Luka's deal is coming, and if you're going to get another superstar in here with him, an actual number two that you'll use as a number two option on this team, you can't be hampered by KP's deal. Now, you can afford to bring in that number two option, but you can't afford to keep paying KP this max level contract if this is all you're going to try and get out of him. So my first move, I'm getting on the phone with Indiana, and I'm trying to make some kind of move for Sabonis or hell, Miles Turner. I know he's got some health issues too. It's just you gotta work with that. But I'm trying to see what I can do. If I gotta take 20 cents on the dollar, I consider it something you have to really take a hard look at, because even though it's a terrible return, it's not just about what talent you get in exchange. It's about the cap money you free up. Now, here's the thing, right? These books have to balance when you do this. You can't just say, give us this rookie contract guy and this role player in exchange for KP. Like, it has to balance out. So you can't just have a situation where it's like, all right, you can have whatever. You can give us like one or two little role players and we'll give you this massive contract and it'll work, right? You're going to have to get a little creative with how you make that work. And so you can open up money, but it's not like you're going to be able to open up 90% of KP's cap hit. So you're going to have to work around that and get clever. But that is what they're going to have to assess. Let's jump back into some of the notes from the game here. Paul George, I said he had a solid game for them, even if it was somewhat quiet, 20, 13, and 6. He also committed 4 of their 7 turnovers. Like, he was not great on that front. He actually ended with 5 turnovers, and yet he was a +9. So he got work in and was productive on that front. But this was a situation where Dallas just froze up. I don't know how many points they ended the fourth quarter with, like how many scored in the frame, but they were absolutely in control going into the fourth quarter. Yes, Kawhi was cooking, but he was about the only thing going for the Clippers. 42 of their final 68 points were Kawhi. They were bricking three after three after three after three with Marcus Morris, with Batum. Jackson didn't do hardly anything after the first quarter, really, but really the first half. You had every opportunity to hit them. LA was stumbling, and Dallas just had to connect with that one final haymaker, and they missed. And LA got up off the mat, and now we're back on even footing going into the final round. There's no more opportunities. Dallas essentially had two opportunities to end this series. If they close out game 3 and go up 3-0, NBA history says nobody is losing in that situation. Dallas nearly did it once themselves, 2003. In round 1, they blew a 3-0 lead to have the series tie up against the Blazers with Scottie Pippen and Rasheed Wallace. And they went to a game 7 and they took care of business there, thankfully. But you had a chance to knock them out in game 3, and you failed despite your best haymaker in the first half of the first quarter. And in game 6, 3 opportunities at home with unprecedented home crowd advantage, home court advantage. And you failed, and you failed, and you failed. Now, it's great that you can go play well and at a high level against cardboard cutouts in LA and about 5,000 or 6,000 fans. You'll have to do it now in game 7. And Dallas has a very short turnaround, the shortest turnaround they've had between games all series. And they're going to have to find a way to get KP going, because you can't bank it all on Luka. You can't just say, hey, we're going to get Luka. We're going to insist that Luka has to be his usual or even better than usual self based on this series. If you're asking for more than 35, 9, and 8, like he was averaging before last night from Luka, or more, you're asking too much. He's playing 41, 42 minutes a game, and it's wearing on him, especially the physicality of it. So we're going to have to see. But I'm convinced that whatever move you make, you can't start Boban for a third straight game. I don't think you can. I'm shocked they did it this game. And LA had a counterpunch set up for it, just like I said they would. I said if you ran him out there for a second straight game in the starting lineup, LA would have a counterpunch ready, because they have a whole game's worth of tape. They know what you did to limit their effectiveness in that area. And so they found something new to implement. In this case, it was the mid-range game, and they were damn good in that territory. I think I had a stat here as well that I wanted to find from Bobby Carella on Twitter. Oh, by the way, we talk about Tim Hardaway Jr.'s production. Keep in mind, Luke Kennard got $64 million for the Clippers. He's done nothing this series. He had like 2 points last night, and I think last night was really his first meaningful minutes in the series. So what do you think Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to get this summer? Something to keep in mind. Where was it? I had a stat here somewhere I wanted to reference that was talking about just how stupid good the Clippers were in the mid-range game. Kawhi Leonard in the second half, 26 points, 10 of 13 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. He was basically yet another game of 40-plus points on 70% shooting, which is obscene. And that was what it took to overcome Dallas in the situation. Okay, this is from Kevin Gray Jr. on Twitter. He says the Clippers shot a whopping 60.5% from the 2-point range and outscored the Mavericks 22-12. 22-12 at the free throw line. So they attempted 14 more free throws than the Mavericks. They got to the line. They converted much better. They got 10 free points in that advantage there. And then in the mid-range, 60%. So your reduction in Game 5 was you took them from shooting 73% as they had in the series in the restricted area and in the paint in general to like 50%. You shaved a lot off of it. Or maybe it was like 47%. You shaved a lot off of that productivity for them. But then you tried to do the same thing defensively and say, hey, we're going to bank on this. What was Boban's plus minus? I'm curious because I know, obviously, he had that run at the start of the third quarter. He was a +5. But I didn't think it was a strong game from Boban. 17 minutes, 12 and 9, 5 of 13 from the field. If Boban's on the floor, it basically just feels like every shot is going to go to him, it feels like. And that's frustrating. That's frustrating as hell to watch. Now, on the point of Luka and his free throws and the nerves, which I see Michael pointing out, saying that he basically was afraid to attack because he didn't want to have to shoot pressure free throws. Luka was 5 of 5 at the foul line last night. So I don't know whatever we want to say in that regard, but he was converting last night. Maybe I think it's a combination of exhaustion, again, for how much he's asked to do for this team. And I think he took to heart a little bit this feeling that he shot too much in game. Salute to IQ Bear, our new subscriber. That is duplicating up, isn't it? Huh. It's also breaking the reality of my stream layout. Interesting. But, yeah, you just can't have him be as passive as he was. You cannot have your best player not responding. When Kawhi was taking control of that game in the late third quarter and in the fourth quarter, you can't go out there and not be willing to attack. So we'll just see, man. It's a devastating loss for the Mavericks. They now have a Sunday afternoon game in which they have to go try and get the job done. Here's that Bobby Corella stat I was talking about. The Clippers were 12 of 17 on mid-range shots in the game. 12 of 17. They were good. They were very good in that situation. The Mavericks, meanwhile, were terrible shooting in the paint. They took 45 shots in the paint and made just 23 of them. That's your game. Like, that is your game. It's really, really a shame here. This is from Nick Engstad on Twitter. I talked about Luka and the games that Dallas has won. He actually hasn't had to score. He had 1 point in game 1, a win. 4 points in game 2, a win. 10 points in game 3, a loss. No points in the fourth quarter of game 4 because he was hurt. He only played 4 minutes of that fourth quarter because it was also a blowout. 2 points in the fourth quarter of game 5, also a win. And then last night he had 12 points, 7 of which came in the final minute. Yeah, meaningless. So we'll see what that is. I know it sounds counterintuitive as I lay out that stat right after saying Luka needed to be more aggressive and assertive as Kawhi Leonard was taking over. I know what that stat says, but that stat also means that in those games, those wins, the role players stepped up. You got big shots out of Hardaway Jr., Dorian Finney-Smith. You got just big minutes out of the team in general where Luka didn't have to do everything. You didn't have that benefit last night, and it was damn sure more apparent than the final minute when he scored those final 7 points. So I think if I'm Dallas, I need to figure out what next defensive adjustment to make. Certainly don't throw Boban out there again and bank on LA just not shooting as well in the mid-range again. And I try to figure out what the hell I can do to get KP at least somewhat going, because 6 shots is not going to do it. Having him stand out there and be a stationary perimeter player is garbage, and I know he hates it. He's trying to say and do all the right things, but I know he hates it. And so unless he's gotten just somehow nothing left and that's all you can get out of him, well, then you got to figure out a way to move on from him anyway this offseason. Otherwise, get him going. Do something to get him going. And Luka, you just got to tell him, look, dude, I know you don't want to take 37 shots. I'm not saying go out there and make sure you get 37 shots, but you cannot afford to be that passive in that moment. If Kawhi is going off and your teammates are struggling, you have to be willing to try and match. You have to look for your own shot a little bit more in that moment because the team feeds off it. The crowd certainly feeds off it. But we'll see, man. It seems it was always destined to come down to this, a Game 7. I didn't think we'd get here the way we got here, but a Game 7 in LA for, I was about to say all the marbles, but it's the first round, so you can't really say all the marbles. I will say I don't think either team is better off coming out of this series. Whoever wins this series, I think, is probably walking into a buzzsaw against Utah, just because I think both teams' star players are gassed, are beaten down, and I don't think they're going to win that war of attrition with a very good Utah team. But we'll see. We'll be here to run it back Sunday, post-game instant reaction, and I'll probably Monday run a post-game show, regardless of the result, and we'll see what we talk about then. Are we talking about a season in memoriam? Hopefully not. Hopefully we're getting to talk about Game 1 in Utah. But that's going to do it for my time, guys. I'm watching my daughter on my own right now. My wife's at a baby shower. And so I've been going about 42 minutes. I'm already playing with fire just in the fact that I'm in my office right next to her nursery. But given how long I've been recording, she's likely to wake up any minute. So I'm going to have to wrap this up now. But don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment below, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect. And until next time, guys, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace. This is my time, watch me now on the rise.